Hey, gang. Our course is designed to help you learn about the geography of the United States and Canada, the real geography of the real United States and the real Canada. Like professors do, I chose a textbook to help us learn. In our case, I chose a book about our big country and our even bigger neighbor. Our book represents a tiny fraction of the real world. It's a highly filtered and generalized version of the real geography. What's important to keep in mind is that we don't want you to learn this textbook per se. Rather, we want you to use this textbook as a tool to help you engage and see the real world more completely than you do now. One of the reasons teachers and professors have long prompted and guided students to read, to highlight, and to take notes as they read and highlight is because taking notes helps your brain engage new ideas in ways that just reading or reading and highlighting alone cannot do. Taking notes requires you to do more than just look at the words. It requires your brain to internalize each factor concept, to convert that factor concept into your own words, and then to transform your words into muscle action as you write or type your notes. You see, the more you allow your brain to engage a new idea, the more different ways you allow your brain to engage a new idea, the better it is for your learning. Highlighting is just a first step. It means you've selected something you think is important and then you highlight it. There's nothing wrong with that. But how does what you highlighted become part of your working knowledge? Have you thought about that? How does highlighting help you retrieve keywords or concepts quickly when you're studying? So, when you study, do you get lost in all the things you highlighted, or does highlighting make it easier for you to find things? What happens if something you highlighted isn't as important as you thought when you highlighted it? Or what happens when you didn't highlight something that actually is important? Do you go back and fix those things? See, highlighting alone cannot help you redress any of those issues. So I'd like to offer you 6 tips for taking better notes, tips that help me become a much more efficient learner. Number one, read the assigned material before class. Sure, anyone can learn anything by reading at any time, but reading ahead of class helps you make better use of your class time. Number two, at a bare minimum, your note should include all of the section headings and subheadings that are in your textbook, including their page numbers. Referencing headings and page numbers in your notes allows you to re-access the material again very quickly and efficiently, which is so important when you're studying. You don't want to waste time searching for things you know you read, but you just can't find. If you just put the page numbers in your notes, you know exactly where to go. Number three, skipping over words you don't completely understand can create confusion. Although you can sometimes figure out the meaning of a word or a phrase using the context clues in the surrounding paragraph, it's often just easier to look it up. So look it up. Tip number four, when you do highlight text or a figure or a table as you're reading, make the effort to include in your notes the page number, a summary of what you highlighted, and a brief summary or indicator of why you thought it was important to highlight it. And so did you highlight it because it illuminated your mental light bulb and it made something clear? That's great. Or did you highlight it because you don't understand it, so you think it's important? That's a completely different reason to highlight something. I always used a circled question mark in my notes to indicate something I wrote, but didn't completely understand. I often used a red color to make my circled question marks. The red color made my questions easy to find when the professor opened the next class with, does anyone have any questions or comments? Boom, I went right to my red question marks, and that's how I started class. Tip number five, bring your reading notes to class. The notes you took while reading will help you make better use of your class time. First, your red question marks will remind you about the questions you had when you were reading. Second, the lecture materials and activities that review or accentuate concepts you already understand just become opportunities for you to mentally fortify those understandings. Maybe you'll just add a comment to your notes here or there. Low stress. And third, only the lecture materials and activities that cover new ground or that jostle your memory and correct a misunderstanding that you had, only those will require the detailed note taking. And tip number 6, because our course is a geography course, there's a spatial component to the information we're learning. In other words, we're not just learning new things, we're also learning where those new things are located. That's why you should want to use the maps I gave you to augment your notes. The maps can help you develop associations between the new information and its location. Draw on the notes, sketch on the notes, color the maps, use those maps to help you situate the knowledge that you're learning. In conclusion, I think many of you would amaze yourselves by how much more efficiently you can learn if only you read more ahead of class and took better notes as you read. Notes that are merely truncated snippets of what's already typed and illustrated in your textbook are not particularly useful. You're just condensing things even more. However, notes that include section headings and page numbers, they can help you re-access textbook material quickly, which is super useful when you're studying. Notes that include notes to yourself, notes that help you make better use of your class time, and notes that take the stress out of studying are, I think you'd agree, much more useful. I know listening to my 6 tips, some of you are probably thinking, oh, that sounds like more work. And it is. But if you can take some of the stress out of taking notes during class, if you can take some of the stress out of studying, if you can make the rest of your learning process easier, then the work you put in before class becomes that much more valuable. All right, gang. I hope that helps, and I'll see you next class.